Hi everyone, welcome to SmugMug Live. Thank you so much for joining us today as always. This is episode 71 and I am going to be joined in a few moments by Lena Drapella. Thank you so much for joining today. As always, this show is brought to you by SmugMug and Flickr. If you are looking for an incredible place to showcase your images online, to store your images in the cloud, or to have a really robust e-commerce solution, then check out everything we have to offer at smugmug.com. Or if you're looking for somewhere to join an incredible photo community and share your images with wonderful photographers around the world, then check out everything we have to offer at flickr.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wherever you are in the world, you're so welcome here on the show. As always, give yourself a shout out in the chat window. Join the chat here on YouTube. Let us know who you are and what part of the world you're joining us from. It's always good to see who's out there. And of course, if you have any questions today, put them in the chat window and I will ask them of our guest. There will definitely be an opportunity to ask lots of questions today. So let's get started. I'm so excited to have an incredible SmugMug ambassador join us today. Joining me from here in the UK, Lena Drapella. Hi Lena, how are you?
Hello, nice to see you. Yeah, I'm really happy to join in from New Forest, which today was sunny for the first day in this year probably. So yeah, we got our shot of vitamin D3 for the first time. So yeah, pretty good.
Excellent.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've been really looking forward to having a chat with you online. You and I have been chatting a lot during the last year, keeping each other motivated and then, touching base with each other just to check in now and again to make sure we're okay during the pandemic, which has been a lot of fun. But today we get to talk to everybody else who's watching and give people a little insight into your world. So for people who don't know you, Lena, how would you describe yourself?
So I'm a professional climbing and adventure photographer. I am actually Polish, but I'm based in the UK at the moment, spending the pandemic with some friends and family down in New Forest in the south, but normally based in Bristol. And yeah, I basically live and breathe climbing for pleasure and for work.
Yeah, it's wonderful, wonderful genre of photography that you work in, mostly climbing, but you love all kind of adventure sport, yeah?
Yeah, any other adventure sports that I can try, I'm always willing to. I do a bit of skiing and surfing as well, but yeah, like trail running and hill walking, all the kinds of outdoor and adventure is what I love. But climbing is definitely like the number one for sure.
Climbing is the thing. So before we get deeper into our conversation, let's see who's joining us today over in the chat window. See if we can encourage all these people watching to give themselves a shout out. Randy is joining us from Tennessee. Hey Randy, good to have you here. Sebastian is joining us from the Southwest UK. Evening, Southwest UK. Maybe is a place called Evening? I don't know. But anyway, Sebastian, you are welcome. Martiana is joining us from Poland.
That would be.
Martina, there you go.
Yeah.
Joining us from your home country. So is that someone you know?
No. Possibly.
Possibly.
You know, it's still quite a big country, but
yeah, indeed it is. You don't know everybody in Poland? Come on.
Almost getting there.
John is joining us from Toronto. You're welcome, John. Thank you for being here. Chris is joining us from Bristol. Hey, Chris. Thank you for joining us. And Iwa is joining us from Gdansk.
Eva, I do know actually. Eva. She's a great photographer herself. So.
Welcome,
hello,
Eva.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for joining and supporting the show today. We appreciate it. Keep those shout outs coming in the chat window. We really do appreciate your support. And you can really support us by hitting that subscribe button as well. And if you're enjoying today's episode, then please hit that thumbs up button. We really do appreciate it. And, it helps support everything that we do here. I've just noticed someone else in the channel. I knew this gentleman might appear in the channel today. So Dario is here. Good evening, Dad, Mum, Wojciech are watching as well. So the whole family's in there watching the show. You're more than welcome.
Hello,
Good to
Dad.
see you. Hi, Dad. Your dad's quite an inspiration, isn't he? He's quite the athlete in his own right.
He is for sure. Yeah, he's a triathlete, an Ironman to be exact, which is quite a impressive. Yeah, very impressive thing to do. It's not an easy race to finish many times. So yeah, shouts out to Dad.
Shout out to the Ironmen watching today. But it was funny when we were promoting the show on our social channels. I did see a post from your dad, and I did have a little sneaky look at his Instagram account, and I saw the adventure sports and the Ironman stuff. So it was pretty clear that you had quite an inspiration at home as you were growing up. So thank you all the family for watching and supporting Lena today. We appreciate it. Gary waves. Hi Gary, good to see you. Courtney joins us from Canada. Cheryl is joining us from Washington State. Yeah, lots and lots of people join us today, so that's all pretty good.
And all over the place.
It's always an international show, which is good. We really appreciate everybody's support. So, climbing. We're going to talk about your climbing photography. When did you get started in climbing?
It was roughly around the same time as I started with photography, really. So it wasn't very long ago. It was maybe 6 or 7 years now. But I started with climbing initially. It was around uni time. And then I thought it's just such an incredible sport that I just couldn't go around without documenting it. And that's where the passion for photography came about. And yeah, it kind of grew together since then.
Well, that's cool. And we are so delighted that you are a SmugMug ambassador and host all your images on your beautiful website hosted here at SmugMug. So I would really encourage everybody to go check out Lena's website at lenadrapella.com, and you can see some incredible and inspiring images that make me feel really unfit at the moment, to be honest. So I would encourage everybody to go over there and check out your website. All the links to all your places that people can find you are here in the description, but you've actually prepared a little presentation for us today, which is wonderful. Ooh. So I'm going to let you give this little presentation. We'll keep it informal and let you and I have a little chat about it. Would you prefer questions during or at the end? How would you like?
I think questions during. Let's just keep it, informal, and I don't really want to talk on my own for the whole time. So yeah. I think it's much easier if we just have a conversation, and whoever else wants to join, it will be a pleasure to have you join in with any of your questions.
Absolutely, something we always try and do here at SmugMug Live is keep it informal and relaxed, and not make it a full-on webinar experience for everybody, but make it interactive. It is a show for you watching at home. So if you have a question for Lena, or at any point you're inspired to ask a question during her presentation, jump into the chat window, start your question with the word question, and that way I'll be able to find it, and I'll ask those questions as we go along. So I'm going to start this little presentation. I'm going to drive the presentation on my end so that you're not having to stream it over the internet on your end. So whenever you're ready to go to the next slide, you can just say next slide for me, and I'll let you get started. So Lena, thank you so much for putting this together, and over to you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Next slide. We're here on SmugMug Live, and I wanted to give you a shout what I'll be talking in this talk. First, I'll start a little bit with where I come from and a little bit about me, which you might have heard a little bit already from Alastair, but then we're going to move on to the climbing photography, which is the main topic of this talk. And I'm assuming, as it's a SmugMug platform, most of you probably have had some experience with photography already or are photographers themselves. So I'm going to keep it brief on the photography side, but try to focus on the climbing side of things. So what's making it different within the climbing environment. So we're going to talk a little bit about the positioning and light. We'll talk a bit about the rope setups and the gear that might be necessary. We'll talk about working with athletes and potentially about how to get started if by the end of the talk you feel like this is something you'd like to try.
Cool.
And
And
yeah.
if anybody does have photo related questions, though, you are welcome to ask them, but we'll assume that you have some basic understandings of photography, but maybe not dangling from a rope doing photography.
But yeah, of course, if there's anything that you do want to ask about anything photography related, like gear that I use or settings or anything like that, do feel free to ask. However, this talk is not mainly about this, so I won't be mentioning it unless you ask and are interested. All right, so let's move on to the next slide and talk a bit about where I come from. So if my family is actually there and watching, you'll probably recognize these images. I grew up in north of Poland, in Gdańsk, in a family of 5 kids, and well, 7 of us in total, and a dog who unfortunately didn't make it to the pictures. And we have been brought up by our parents in a very adventurous spirit, and I cannot say thank you enough to my parents for how they've brought us up and how wonderful it was. And yeah, I definitely remember my childhood as one of the happiest times in my lifetime. And if we move to the next slide, it's like, yeah, you can see that adventure was always part of us and the family and myself. We've been sleeping in tents pretty much every summer and canoeing and, you know, adventuring all over the place. However, climbing, which is the next slide, was something that I've discovered fairly recently. As I said, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. And if you look at the photo on the left, this is pretty accurate depiction of what climbing actually makes me feel like most of the time. It is a wonderful, wonderful sport, and I cannot tell you enough that it's beautiful, and it gets you to places that you would never have seen otherwise, and meet people that, you know, smile equally as the person pictured here, Jade, on the picture. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend it. And because it takes you to all those beautiful places, you end up wanting to document it. At least that was the case in my example. So if we move to the next slide, this is the moment where the passion for dangling on a rope has appeared, and I have decided that this is what I want to do with my life. And yeah, here we are. So photography is my main job at the moment, and I could not be happier to pursue this career in a wonderful sport with like so many beautiful people around, and just, yeah, wonderful, wonderful community. However, it is a little bit different to most sports that you would have thought of because of its surroundings and the traveling aspect of it. So there is a few things that are worth knowing, which hopefully I'll be able to explain briefly to you. And the first thing that I would like to talk about, if we move to the next slide, is understanding the sport. So I assume that's probably the case for every sports photographer out there. You need to understand what is it that you're shooting. And the main things I'm talking about here, like if you want to photograph climbing, you need to be aware of the climbers' movements and where they're going to be going next. Like the routes generally outdoors are not always in a straight line. So quite often the route will follow a little zigzag, and you kind of have to have the basic understanding of where to position yourself as a photographer to know where the action is going to be happening. And the same goes, actually, I chose that picture on purpose because if you look closely, the climber is actually sitting on a rope. He's not actually climbing. And this is one of those things that, you know, as a professional photographer, you probably shouldn't photograph unless it tells a story. So unless it tells you a story of a climber who couldn't complete a route, this is something that you normally wouldn't photograph. And the same with like pulling on a rope or pulling on a draw. Climbing is considered a pure sport if you can get to the top without using anything else but your hands and feet. So understanding those little, you know, tiny little things about climbing would definitely help you to be a better climbing photographer. So I would suggest, if this was something that you wanted to get into, being a climber yourself is definitely helpful. And if go on.
Before we move on, I have to ask where this image is, because it's an incredible location.
Yeah, so this image is actually shot in Finale Ligure, which is in Italy. And I gotta say, it's such an incredible sport. It's just like it's like this little cave which's got those 3 openings. I think that, yeah, it's one missing on this image. And you have to like crawl into to get there. There's no like way around or anything. It's one of the most stunning places I've been to for sure.
Yeah, it's so photogenic in its own right, but then to add your sporting element into it, and position someone just in that perfect spot, it really makes for an incredible photo in its own right. Absolutely incredible. Love it.
Yes, so that was a conscious decision of having the climber actually hanging on a rope rather than climbing, because we've tried with a climber climbing, but it almost like the silhouette wasn't quite good enough for the image. He wasn't quite as central. So I've asked the climber to position himself further away from the rock, but that means he had to sit on a rope. So conscious decision, but as I said before, there are those little things that you need to be aware of, that he's not actually climbing at the moment, right? He's just resting, So
yeah, and
knowing the sport definitely helps.
You're so fortunate to have athletes in your images, because it really gives it that sense of scale. Without having that climber there, you wouldn't really know whether this was a tiny little hole in a boulder or with tiny shrubs, or whether these are big trees in this massive cave system. So the human element in these images is so critical and so inspiring, and yeah, wonderful, wonderful images.
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel like this is part of the reason why I'm not a landscape photographer as per se, because I love landscapes and I love beautiful places. But for me, having that human element just adds this little extra bit to the image, which, for me personally makes it a bit more interesting. Obviously, there are some incredible landscape photographers out there, which I admire deeply. But for my personal expression, I like to have that scale, that person somewhere within the image. But yeah, moving onwards to positioning. So as I mentioned, knowing the sport does help a little bit, because then you can kind of imagine where you would want to be, either on a rope or if you want to shoot from the ground. And this, again, is an interesting one to talk about, because most people imagine climbing photographers hanging from the rope most of the time. While in reality, like, some of my favorite shots that I've ever taken are actually shot from the ground. So if we move to the next slide, that kind of portrays the basic idea of what people think photos will look like depending on where you are on the vertical basis. So if you're shooting from the ground, we call it a bum shot. So the photo on the left is what normally people imagine photos from the ground shot as, that you can't actually see the climber's face, you can only see their bum, and it's generally not the most flattering part of human body.
Does this angle make my bum look big kind of shot? Yeah, so.
Exactly. So in these cases, it is true that to get the best shot, you do actually have to be on the rope to be able to, like the photo on the right, it's a shot in a beautiful place in Catalonia called Oliana, where some of the best climbers go to test themselves, because all the hard routes in the world are over there. But it is a long cliff, a tall cliff. It's like 50 meters tall. So to get that shot, you need to, get your exercise going to get those 50 meters up. And you can get this unique perspective of looking down, which, most people won't ever see unless they go through the effort of climbing up that rope, to be able to see climbers' expressions and their faces and the holds they're using. Because actually, I don't know if there are any climbers listening, but the route on the right, the climbed by Polish climber Kamil Ferenc, is actually 9A+. So it's like, one of the hardest routes out there. It's like really, elite level for sure. And, unless you're climbing that grade or are a photographer who made the effort to go there, you're never going to see how hard it really is. So it is a very unique perspective. But then moving on to the next slide,
Before we move on, sorry, can I just ask where this location is? It looks to me maybe like the Dolomites or something.
Spot on. Yeah, it is in the Dolomites.
Yeah,
it's
incredible location.
It is so beautiful. I cannot imagine any more beautiful spot. It's definitely like one of my top location for climbing photography, because you don't even have to be a photographer to get a good shot. It's just wherever you point your camera, you'll get beautiful place for sure.
One of my favorite parts of the world for sure. Cannot wait to get back to the Dolomites.
One day when we're allowed to, we can go back to. And yeah, coming back to the positioning, if you look at these images, obviously they're all shot from, from the rope, but it's quite a lot of faff. To be honest, it is a lot of faff to set something up like this. And yes, as I said before, it gives you this unique perspective where you can see the climber's face. But if you think about it, it also limits you massively because you can only move up and down. You can't really move side to side unless you like jump around. But it makes you a lot less flexible than being on the ground is. So I would suggest if you are just getting into the photography, like if you go to the next slide, most of the time we spend on the ground because you have that flexibility to work with the light. If you're working with natural light and the direction is always, similar of the sun, you can't really change that. So being on the ground allows you to move around and work with this light more than with anything else, and with your positioning and with your framing, which if you are shooting from the rope, you're limiting yourself in this factor. Yes, you can get your climber's face, but sometimes it's worth considering that there is more to climbing photography than just getting the facial expressions. Speaking of which, if we move to the next slide, one of the most important things.
Sorry, I'm busy typing, having a chat with your dad about skiing. Sorry. On the
I can't blame you. Yeah, he is a ski instructor as well, so he'll probably try to chat you into it for sure. And so moving on to another big part of climbing photography would be the lighting. And I work with both artificial and natural light, but there are so many things to consider. If we move to the next slide, the things we have to think of is direction, the strength, and the time of the day. So here we've got a very beautiful Profoto. Is it B1X? That was actually assisting in the shoot. The photographer in the background is called Paolo Sartori. So if anyone else is looking for good photography inspiration within the climbing world, he's your go-to for sure. And I'm very grateful for him, actually, because he was one of the first people who introduced me to photography and taught me the ropes. So, definitely do check his work out. But yeah, there's so many things to consider, like direction of the light, whether you want it to use as a key light to lit your subject, or whether you want it as a backlight to showcase the background and have a little nice rim light around your subject. But also the strength and the time of day. Is it a sunny day? Is it a cloudy day? Are we shooting in the morning? Are we shooting midday or maybe in the afternoon? It all changes how you work with the beautiful light we've got, hopefully. Moving on to the next slide. Here we've got photos of Tom Livingstone, a great alpinist. And you can see in these pictures, these are taken maybe maybe a minute apart. It's the same location, it's the same model, same day, but they look so different depending on how you position yourself as a photographer and your model as well. So just have a play with it and see how it works. And remember that if you do decide to set up a rope, you will have limited options of what you can do with this light, which is one of the main factors of what makes a good image.
Yeah, sorry, one of the things that jumped out at me when I saw these slides, and something I've played around with before, when you're in the Alps or high mountains with people with goggles on, it's just incredible the light difference by adding the color to his goggles in these images. It just adds so much more to the story and adds so much color, and using those reflective surfaces can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. So looking here on this left image, because the sun is behind them, you don't get that reflection on the goggles quite as strong as on the right image. So you're right. I never really thought of it that way, but you're totally right that it does add a lot with the color and both with the reflections and telling the story. Although I'm not a fan of a photographer reflecting in the goggles. I know that's the case for many, but I don't really like that one. So if you can avoid this,
especially now with the fancy ones, with the full mirrored surface, and you can't hide yourself in them at all.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how good your Photoshop skills are afterwards.
Don't have time.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, just have a play with it. And so here, considering the time of day one more time. So these are images shot probably around midday, which you can judge by the harshness of the light and the high contrast and the shadows. And it's funny, most photographers say that, you know, there's not even a point taking your camera out before golden hour, but I actually think that within climbing, this harsh light can almost highlight the strength of the climbers, which I personally really like. Like both of these climbers, we've got Rosalind on the left and Swana on the right, like they're incredible athletes. And I do feel like this midday harsh sun almost benefits the strength and the, you know, the physical abilities to showcase how hard they've worked to get these routes. So, you know, again, it's a personal decision, but I feel like it's worth mentioning it.
Yeah, it definitely pulls out the definition in their physique and the, you know, the rugged nature of the climb. It's definitely an interesting concept because, like as you mentioned, most photography we're trying to avoid that time of day.
Yeah.
But here it can be a real advantage for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like having the, you know, when you're in a studio and have this really strong light just above your subject to, you know, to showcase the muscles. It almost works in the same way, but you're working with natural light. And it does also give you the opportunity to work, you know, throughout the whole day rather than just wait for a sunrise or sunset. So I feel like it's worth taking the advantage of that. And, you know, if you want the soft light in the golden or blue hour, then absolutely go for that too. But, you know, you're not doing anything at noon, so why not take your camera out, right?
Indeed.
But moving on to this one, that's on the other side, very soft light. So that was a conscious decision again. So this climb is actually in Swanage in south of the UK. I don't know if any UK people will recognize this spot, but it's a beautiful climb. However, it's in the sun most of the day. And on this particular shoot, I actually wanted to avoid having the sun on the shoot. I didn't want this harsh contrast because it just didn't go with the feel that I wanted from these images. And Tom, who is the model in these images, was very kind for me to wait till maybe it was like 5 or 6 p.m. when the wall finally came into shade. And we decided to shoot that at the very end of the day, even though we don't get the golden or the blue hour here. You got that flat lighting without the harsh contrast. So yeah, it's just worth being aware of what your options are and how you can, you know, make it work for whatever vision you've got for your photography. And then we're going to move on to the exciting bit. So the new bit would be the rope setups, right? So if you do decide that the shot that you want to take is only possible from setting up a rope, then by all means, go ahead and set it up. But do be aware that it is going to take probably an hour or so to set it up and take it down and everything. So it does take quite a significant chunk of the day. And as it is with ropes, you just need to make sure that you're being nice and safe and not doing anything silly. So a few points worth mentioning, if we move to the next slide, is static line. So I don't know how many of you out there are climbers, but there are different types of ropes. And we've got some static lines, which are generally white or black, although it does change a little bit now. But mostly they're black or white. And the difference between this rope and a normal climbing rope is the stretch. So the static line has very, very, very limited stretch, which means that if you are jummering at it, so like trying to climb up and the rope is over the edge, it's not going to be, you know, rubbing up and down and then eventually break. So one of the most important things is to have a static line. On another note, if there are any sharp edges, which, you know, inevitably there might be, you can also use a rope protector, which looks like this. And you can, it's a nice little Velcro thing. So you put it around the rope to make sure that all those edges are, you know, nice and they're not going to damage your rope. Other things, oh, sorry, I'm touching my microphone. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Alastair. What's this?
Yeah, sorry. Is that maybe where the rope goes over the edge of a cliff or over another rock or something? You would put that protector on to stop it getting rubbed. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. So if you have like a little roof or something, for example, so if you're on this side and your climber is here, there will be like a sharp edge on the rock. And to avoid it, you would put the protector just to make sure that the actual rope is not rubbing on it. So this these protectors are from quite, I'm not really sure what the fabric is, but like really, really durable, so it won't damage the sheath, which is the outside part of the rope. So these are like a necessity. If I'll always have them in my bag, and I'll make sure that, you know, if there are any points where the rope would be rubbing, you'll set these up just in case. I mean, you know, it is your life on the end, so you kind of want to make sure you've done everything you can, right?
More safe the better. So a static line doesn't have any stretch. Does that mean that, I'm showing my ignorance here, does that mean a typical climbing rope has a lot of stretch in it?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it's good that you're mentioning it. So a normal climbing rope will have a very significant amount of stretch to it. And the reason for it is that if you were to fall down, so imagine that you're climbing up the rope and you're falling down. And if the rope is, if you were to climb on a static rope, the rope's not going to stretch, so you're going to slam into the wall and it's going to really hurt. You know, you could break your back if that would happen. But if you've got a dynamic rope, which we call the ropes which have the stretch, that means that your fall will be nice and slow and the rope will stretch slowly, and you're going to have like a very nice and pleasant experience of falling in the air but not actually hurting yourself.
Oh, so, you make that sound so pleasant. I'm sure it's not the reality.
No, it's great. I mean, it does feel like you're going to die, but then you fall off and you're like, oh, this was great fun. You know, I don't know why I was so scared about it. So
built-in suspension into the rope there. So
yeah, pretty much. It's exactly what it is. It's just a bit of suspension, as you called it. But it's important to know when to use it. Like as a photographer, you don't want to use it because that stretch would cause the rope to, you know, wear out quicker on the edge, and, you know, then you're going to die. So you probably don't want that.
Harder to climb up and down on the rope as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So like if you were to try to climb up the dynamic rope, you'd be like jumping up and down every time you try to make a move, while a static line allows you to just move a little bit faster as a photographer. So it is, one of the key elements that, you know, people are not always aware of, because they think, oh, it's a climbing rope, I'm sure we'll be fine. But actually, it's quite an important point to mention. So I thought I'll give you guys a shout in case you want to try it. And then another things worth mentioning are the anchors, directional lines, and rope protectors I've just mentioned. But okay, so if we move to the next slide, here we've got an example of an anchor. So I don't know, again, how many of you are climbers, how many are not, but we're going to take the example of trad climbing, which is where you have to put your own protection. So if you look at this left image, I am really sorry. I know it's a horrible, horrible slide. These are not my images, but I thought it would be easiest to explain it on these. So I'm going to, you know, go through it fast so you don't have to look at it for very long. But if you look at those pieces on the left-hand side, they're called cams or nuts, which are climbing pieces that you can basically either slide into the rock or wedge into the rock. And once you're sure that they are secured properly, you can put a rope around it, as there is on the left image, to equalize it. But just make sure that you've got many, many, many points. 2 points is more for sport climbing. But like in this image, if you count, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of gear. So this is something that you'd probably trust if they are placed correctly. And then once you've tied your big knot, you can hang your static line from this carabiner at the bottom, and then you can start climbing. But make sure that your anchors are as secure as you can possibly make them. Like you want to make sure that you've got full trust in this anchor, because, you know, it's your life on it. So definitely worth spending your time, and, you know, take your time to build up something that you'll 100% trust. And then, if we move to the next slide, we're going to talk a bit about directional lines. So if you look at the image on the left, it's quite a steep route, right? You can see the climber is quite far away from me, and I'm basically free hanging. So now, can you guess what is wrong with this image?
Oh,
yeah.
What's wrong with the one on the left?
Yeah, the one on the left. So if you imagine that you've just got a string or like a rope hanging down, and you're sitting on the string and trying to take a photo,
eventually
what might happen?
You might start swinging around and you're not very stable.
Exactly. So this is when you need directional lights. Maybe not so much swinging, but you'll start rotating. And trust me, there is nothing more annoying than when your climber is making some really cool move and you're trying to take a picture and you're starting rotating and facing it back. You know, you can bend a little bit, but there is limits to our bodies that how far we can bend over to take this picture. So
Start swimming in midair, trying to make it go back around.
Yeah, exactly. Kicking the air, you know, like trying to push with the hands, and you know, it works a little bit, but there is a better solution. Like if you were to look on the image on the right, you can see this orange line that goes to the rock. So even if that's like really far away from you, that is always a point that you can pull on that will bring you into the position that you want to be in. So this is something which I would recommend using for any photographers and especially filmmakers where you're actually trying to take, you know, more than one single shot and stay in one position.
I've got a question for you. The directional lines you mentioned earlier about climbers, they don't go straight up, right? They zigzag up and down.
Yeah.
You know, the face as they're finding that route. So if you're dangling on that straight line, do you then also use the directional ropes to pull yourself laterally across the route so you can photograph them?
Yes. Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's a very good point. It is well worth mentioning that you want to have a line like this somewhere, like especially if it's a steep line and your climber is like, you know, far away from you. It's really useful to have another directional line that you can pull yourself closer to the climber or further away from the climber. Yeah, basically, it just gives you a little bit more flexibility with where you can move while being on a rope. So. And then what everyone's been waiting for.
Oh, gear. We love the gear.
You know, how many gear geeks we have over here. I'm one of them for sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, we've talked a bit about the climbing gear and, you know, the picture on the right, unfortunately, is not a very accurate depiction of what my climbing bag normally looks like. I wish it was like this. Normally it's, you know, another bag like this. The cameras take probably one bag and then the climbing kit takes another. This is definitely very, very minimal. There's normally, you know, a static line and a few more quick draws and just, yeah, trad gear if you're in a trad crag. So I wish it was this nice and easy. Normally it's not. But yeah, we've spoken a little bit about the cams and the and the nuts that you can use to build an anchor. The other things worth mentioning are a rig and an ascender. So these are the pieces of kit that you use to actually climb the rope. So this piece, you put the rope through it, basically, and that, you know, holds you on the rope, basically, so that you're not falling down. And this one is an ascender, which lets you climb the rope up. But if you look at it, I'll just open it up for you. It's got nice little teeth. So basically, those teeth will, you know, catch the rope. And basically, so it only moves one way. You cannot move it up and down. You'll always be able to move it up. And this is how it allows you to climb up the rope. If you want to come down, you're going to have to like undo it so that the teeth are no longer jamming into the rope.
What's the technical name for that climb when you go up the way?
Jummering.
Yeah, I thought it was because Chris, when you were talking about having a static line and a dynamic line, Chris said that jummering up a static rope is hard enough without it bouncing on you as you're doing it. It does look very, very exhausting trying to jummer. Is it jummer?
Jummer, yeah. It gets your biceps strong.
I can imagine. Is it something that requires a lot of technique, or is it just brute force?
No, there is a lot of technique to it. You can definitely make it a little bit easier for you if you know how to do it. There are also ways of making it slightly easier, having two ascenders, but then there's always the balance between, like, you know, how much gear you bring with you and how heavy your bag is. And, you know, you just have to make that decision whether you prefer to get a little bit more tired on the approach with all the kits or a little bit more tired on ascending the rope, right, for jummering. So, you know, always a balance.
There's lots of questions starting to come in, which is wonderful.
Oh yeah, let's go ahead.
I haven't ignored your questions. I've seen the ones further up, but I'm just finding the appropriate moment to ask those questions. Courtney's got a few questions, but this one, she says, question: do you prefer one ascender or both a left and right ascender?
So I do actually own 2 ascenders, and I've very rarely used both of them. I'll pretty much always have one on me. That's, as I said, it's the balance between how much gear you carry with you and how much easier it makes your job. In most of my shoots, if it's a commercial shoot, the shooting from the rope is such a tiny part of what we're actually doing on a whole shoot that I'll, just go ahead with one ascender most of the time.
That's cool. I do see all the other questions out there, but I'm going to let you move on with your presentation. I will come back to all these questions because there's some good ones there,
Sure.
and we'll look forward to asking it. But we'll go back to your slides. I have to say though, we are all gearheads as photographers. We love gear, but climbing takes gear to a whole other level. You have some of the coolest pieces of gear out there. It almost makes me want to take up climbing just because of the gear.
Yeah, I mean, these pieces, the ones that I showed before,
Yeah.
as we call them, friends or cams. I mean, this is such a cool piece of engineering. I mean, they're also, quite expensive, gotta say. It's like 80 quid per one. But if you look at it, it's just like so much thought must have gone into it. That it's just insane. And you can this is quite a big one. You get them in like a lot smaller size, and they hold your weight even like a massive fall factor force when you fall down from whatever 5 meters, and this will stay wedged in a little crack and save your life. It's pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, it's all about wedging. Do you drill as well?
No, I personally don't, but I do climb on routes that have been drilled or bolted, as we call it. So they will have metal bolts in the rock, and that's obviously a lot safer because it's like well wedged in and glued in, and it's just like, this is the the more safe side of climbing, I would say, that a lot of people prefer, including me most of the time, to be honest.
One of the coolest pieces of gear I ever saw was we made a SmugMug film featuring Tim Kemple, who's an incredible creative out of Utah, and we made a film about ice climbers in Iceland climbing icebergs and in the ice caves, and they used an ice bolt where it drills, as you screw it, it drills into the ice.
Yeah, ice screws.
Ice screws, incredible piece of technology. Just love them. Just looks so cool.
They're great. I've seen the episode with Tim Kemple. He's actually one of my, big inspirations for sure. I love his photography, and it was a great episode. And yes, you are right. Ice screws are incredible because they're just, they have to be hollow so that when you screw through the ice that you removing can move out basically. So
awesome.
They're crazy.
Awesome pieces of kit. Right, enough gear talk. Let's move on to your gear.
Yes. So we've pretty much talked about the gear that I wanted to. Obviously, if any one of you has any questions about the photography gear in particular that I'm using, then please do send them through, and I'll answer them whenever Alastair tells me what the questions are.
We'll get to them.
Yeah. But the next thing I would like to talk about is working with athletes. And I mean, I'll keep this brief because obviously it depends. Athletes can mean your friends even, or anyone that you're photographing. But it is worth mentioning that there are different ways of working with people, and it really depends on what type of the shoot is it. Is it just, this athlete over here on the photo is called Hazel Findlay. She's an incredible athlete based in the UK, a really, really good trad climber. And this particular photo was not from a photo shoot. It was only, we went climbing. We were in Sardinia at the same time during a festival, and we just went climbing on our day off, and I just snapped it just before I was belaying her. But if we move to the next slide, these photos are from Pembroke with an Italian athlete called Jacob Polarker, and that was a staged shoot. So when it's a staged scenario, you've got a slightly more bigger control over what you're allowed to say to your athlete or ask them to do. Like you can say to, ask them to do something one more time, or maybe face this way or face that way. While if you're shooting with an athlete who is in the zone and trying to send their route, it's a lot harder to, you're either the main person in the picture, which you direct the image that you're trying to get, which is normally the case for collection shoots, or you're just an observer. So So sometimes you just have to take a step back, not intervene, make sure that your climber is, you know, free to climb wherever they're doing, and you can just observe. So it's worth, you know, finding that difference between what kind of shoot is it that you're working at, and whether you can intervene with what's happening in front of your camera, or whether you can just, you know, take a step back and only watch what's happening.
You kind of answered one of our questions there. I think it was another question from Courtney. Let me find it. Let's see. Oh, I've lost it. But she was asking, do you typically... Oh, here it is. No, I've lost it. She was typically asking, do you normally photograph on the send as they're sending it, or do you ask them to stop and pose while you're...
Yeah, so both. It does, like, obviously if it is a collection.
Sorry, I found
shoot,
it. It was Susanna. Sorry, Susanna. It was Susanna asked that. Are most of your photos taken during the actual send, or do you tell the climbers where you want them? So that depends on the commission or the job, I guess.
Yeah, so exactly. It depends on the job. If it's a collection shoot, generally it's more a job of a photographer than it is of a climber. So then I will tell them where I want them to be, or even which route I want them to climb. But if it's a specific climb and they have it, specifically if they haven't done it yet, if they haven't sent a route, but I'm actually there photographing at the time, I will try to stay out of the way as much as possible, because there's no worse feeling than, you know, someone falling off their send go because your foot was on the next handhold, you know. So you want to make sure that if you are photographing during the send, you're like not intervening at all, like as if you're not existing. Obviously they'll hear your shutter speed, which is generally quite loud, especially if it's a cracks move. But yeah, you try to stay away as much as possible.
Great.
Cool. And yeah, moving on to the next image, that's just another example of a athlete shoot, which was partially staged, partially not. The athlete here is called Jenny Kruder. He's a very, very strong Slovenian climber. And bouldering, actually, which is what, so climbing without ropes is called bouldering. And that actually is so much easier for photography, because A, you're staying on the ground, so you can move around freely and generally still be within a good distance from a climber. And B, it's generally so physically intense that climbers very rarely do it first go. So you'll have multiple chances to get your perfect shot. This climb in the top right corner is called Dreamtime, and it's an 8C boulder in Ticino in Switzerland, which is like one of the hardest of the grade almost. And, you know, he spent, I don't know, 7 years or so trying to work it. And even in this one trip, we went there last year in November, he had like, you know, multiple goes over 3 or 4 days. So even though it's not the most, you know, easy to picture boulder because it's very dark and in the forest, you still have enough opportunity to walk around and try to find a shot that you actually want to get.
Beautiful set of images. Just even just those 3 is a beautiful set, from the nice portrait to him in action. I thought that was a picture of me at the top there, then I realised it wasn't me.
Yeah, it looks very similar.
Yeah,
I mean,
looks like me from the back.
Lacks the hat. That's what gave it away. And yeah, so to finish off, I wanted to run through a few of my favorite images and just explain, well, not explain, just tell you which ones are actually shot from the rope and which ones are actually shot from the ground, to give you the perspective of how much you can do by just staying on the ground and not always, you know, going through all the faff and wasting time. So both of these images are shot from the ground. We've got an athlete on the left, we've got Julien in the French Alps, and we've got Jan Kraus on the right, and again it's shot from the ground. I mean, I did have to scramble a little bit, but I didn't use any ropes or anything like that. Worth mentioning, the one on the right is at sunrise, so sometimes it is worth the early wake up, even if you hate it the same as I do. But yeah, sometimes it's worth it. Yeah, and then this shot is, again, shot from the ground. No ropes required. Obviously, that's bouldering, so it's a bit easier. But it's shot for a Mammoth collection in November. So I think it's probably up on their website around now, with Ishan in the center. And
this is another one that, you know, I have a lot of landscape photographs that look like this but don't have people climbing in them. And without the climber on that rock, it could be a small stone really close to the lens, and then
Yeah.
suddenly your comprehension of this image has just changed dramatically by having that guy bouldering right there on that rock. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love it. It just, yeah, gives the image another dimension by having that scale and understanding like how vast the landscape is or not. Like I just think, yeah, it's just this extra bit of understanding that it gives to the image. So, but I do like a bit of landscape, you know. And these two images, yeah, we've got Nat on the left, resting before the cracks. So cracks is what we call the hardest part of the route. And Jenny, you'll have like a better hold before the cracks that you can rest on, which we call the rest. And that shot is shot from the ground. Surprise, surprise. Again, you
Oh,
have to
really?
scramble up to be a bit higher. But yeah, it's a shot from the ground. The shot on the right of
That's got to
Swan
be from
is,
a rope,
yeah,
surely. Yeah.
that one is from the rope. So this one you've noticed is from the rope. It was such a beautiful moment. You can see in the back those clouds. It was like an inversion in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
It was just stunning. And that's like around sunset time. So we were just about to enter the golden hour. It was very, yeah, beautiful moment. Magical for sure.
Yeah, my favorite times in the mountains are always when there's an inversion below you, skiing in the Alps and stuff. When you're above the
Yeah.
clouds, it's just the best feeling in the world. But I guess when you're on the
Mm.
side of a climb or dangling from a rope, it probably feels even more epic, I can imagine.
Yeah, in this particular moment, it felt absolutely wonderful. Especially that most of the day, you know, when you stand like at the bottom of the route, and most of the day it was very cloudy and foggy, and because you were in a cloud, you felt like it's just a horrible winter day. And as soon as you climb up over it, it's, you know, this wonderful sunny, you know, summery almost day. Oh, yeah, magical for sure.
Bringing back great memories, and that's one of the wonderful things about photography, is it can transport you to those places in time. Indeed.
Yeah, yeah. And then we're going to finish off those series with two images, which are both shot from the ground. Actually, the one on the left is from the same spot, Abaya, around sunrise, although a little bit later on. And one from French Alps again, of Valentine on an ice climb. And yeah, it just shows that obviously this is a bit of a bum shot, you know, edge there. You can't see the climber's face, but you can still make it an interesting composition and have that freedom to, you know, maneuver around the space. So I would encourage to, like, you know, maximize your options at the start by, you know, just walking around the place and seeing what options you've got, scrambling up a little bit, maybe coming down. You just so many opportunities, like, by staying on the ground. So yeah, which is maybe not the best thing to say on a workshop or a talk about climbing photography. So sorry, guys, if I'm disappointing
Sounds
you.
great
But
to me. Staying on the ground sounds ideal for me.
yeah, and imagine if you do have to like climb up as well, you have to carry all your gear, right? So I'll normally take a couple of cameras and maybe a lens and maybe a sandwich, you know, and a bottle of water. It just, you know, it's a lot of weight to carry up with you. So yeah, just be aware that's an issue. And to very much finish off, I would like to encourage you that if you did feel encouraged, and if you do feel like this is something that you would like to get into, the very best way to start would be by getting into indoor climbing photography. So if we move to the next slide, the best thing that you can start with is, well, first sign up for a climbing course in your local gym. And there is quite a lot of them. They're doing very well, maybe not in a pandemic, but in general times they're doing really well and are popping up, you know, in every place pretty much. Mm-hmm. So just, you know, sign up for a course, learn how to climb, meet some amazing people, because the climbing community is really, really wonderful. And, you know, start photographing with your friends around your local gym, and then slowly move on. If we move to the next slide, maybe start your see if you've got any luck with climbing competitions. So these are generally really good opportunities to meet professional athletes and other climbers that you can photograph in other scenarios as well, like outdoors later on. But that would be the first step I would recommend if this is something you'd like to get into.
Yeah, that image on the left there is so powerful. I just think that's an incredible image. You can see the power, the movement, the effort. You've captured that incredibly well.
Yeah, so shout out here to the athletes. Actually, we've got Ida Kups on the left, who's a Polish athlete, and on the right, we've also have a Polish athlete, Maja Rutka. So both incredibly strong climbers who might not be quite as well known as some of the other people we featured in this talk, but equally as strong for sure. So give them a follow if you find them on social media for sure.
Incredible.
And yeah, in this moment, I would love to thank all my sponsors, SmugMug and Mamu and GoPro and Peak Design for, allowing me to continue with my passion and hosting my great website as well. Thank you so much. You guys should have seen my previous website. It's been horrendous. So it's definitely changed over the last few years. Although we've been working together for, 4 years now or so? It's been a while.
Yeah, I was delighted. I was introduced to you at a conference by another SmugMug friend, Liam. So it's been 3 or 4 years, maybe maybe more than that, because last year doesn't feel like a year.
Doesn't count.
So yeah, does it even count? Right, we've got lots of questions here, but first of all,
Brilliant.
Lena, thank you so much. That was a great presentation, really inspiring and motivating. And just incredible what the climbing community does as a sport. But photographically, I think it's one of the most interesting sports to photograph, either on location or indoors, or from a commercial point of view. Before we get to the questions, I'm going to be cheeky and start with one of my own questions. You also as well as photographing the athletes, you also photograph for a lot of brands as well. How did you get into that side of the photography, moving up from the sport to the more kind of commercial work that you do?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. There is a few ways that you can, like, if this is something that you're aspiring to as a photographer, to work with climbing brands, I would say the first and most important thing to do is go to ISPO. So it's a trade show which is hosted in Munich every February. Is the winter ISPO, and then I think June is the summer one. And this is a place where you have every single outdoor brand that you can think of and their reps, and you just set up meetings and show them your portfolios and talk to them. And ideally, you already have some kind of plan, made up with how you can make it a brand better or showcase it better. So that would be a number one advice I would give.
Yeah, get yourself out there and show them your work. Right, while you were talking here, I'm scrolling back through the questions to get to all the ones that we missed. Courtney had a question a little while ago. She says, does Oleana have top-down access for you to set up for the overhead shot, or did you have to climb an adjacent route to set up? Remind me, which one was Oleana?
Oleana, remember when I showed that bum shot? So not that one, the one on the right.
Let me see if I can find it while you answer that question.
Yeah, so Oleana, you do actually have to, that one, the one on the right, with a Polish climber, Kamil Ferenc on, I can't remember the name of the route, sorry, but a 9+. So not, to my knowledge, it does not have a top-down access, so you have to set up your own ropes. However, because it's such a popular spot, I've been there maybe 3 or 4 times, and pretty much every single time there were lines already set up. So if you manage to find the owner of the rope and ask them if it's okay to use it, then quite often there is, a selection that you can choose from already. But no, there is no top-down access, so you have to set up your own rope normally.
No easy solution for that one. The Gary comes back with the fun question. Gary says, how many times have you bounced a camera against a rock?
Yeah, probably more than I'd like to admit. I gotta say that UV filters come really, really, really handy. I have broken one recently, and every time, this is a lifesaver that you look at your lens and it's broken and you're like, oh no. So definitely do have a filter for your lens for sure. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those areas where having a UV filter would definitely be a very, very good idea, so that when you break that, you just unscrew it and replace it with something rather than damaging the actual lens. Courtney has another question. Do you find that you need to collect the rope underneath you so that it is not in the shots?
Yes and no. Depends on how wide your lens is and where your climber is, and whether they're directly underneath you or whether they're slightly more to the side. If they are directly underneath you, yes, most of the time you'd have to pick it up and coil it on your legs or so. But quite often you can just swing it to the side if the climber's not directly underneath.
Cool. And Hanier asks, hey, Lena, great talk. Thanks for the insights. Question, how do you carry your camera gear? When climbing, do you always have your camera available? You obviously have to have both hands free at points. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I get that question a lot with mainly I get the question of how to secure your camera gear. When it comes to climbing photography, I have a clear boundary between the days that I'm climbing and the days that I'm shooting. So most of the time, if I'm climbing myself as a climber, I probably won't have my camera on me unless it's a multi-pitch and I'll have a backpack. But on the shooting days as a photographer, I'll just have it on me. I actually use a Peak. I've got my camera here, so whoops. So this is a Sony, this is a Peak Design leash, which are incredibly strong, and I'll use these, but I also back it up with a sling on my harness, so that even if I was to drop it, which obviously hopefully will never happen, but it will still be caught by a sling as a backup. So this is how I secure it on me, but I'll normally have it on my shoulder anyway. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Not too dissimilar to how most of us carry our cameras, but maybe just with an extra leash here or there. And definitely check out Peak Designs. Those of you that have watched this live show before will know that I've had Peter on the show a few times from Peak Design. We love their gear, so go check that out. Thomas asks, how much time do you spend in Lightroom on those photos, or in general? Do you do a lot of post-production work?
So yes, I do edit my images for sure, as well every other photographer I would imagine. I try not to spend too much time. I mean, the bulk of the time would be the selection, not the editing. I end up pressing my shutter button way too much comparing to other people. So I do end up with thousands and thousands of images. So this would be the bulk of the time that I spend in editing. The actual editing or post-production is pretty quick. I've got a set of presets that I've created myself, and I just use these for most of my images and then just do basic adjustments on each of the photos.
Cool. And got to give a shout out to Jay Ford, who says, woo, from LA. Jay, thank you for tuning in. Jay joined me on the show last week, and we just released an incredible SmugMug film with Jay. So if you haven't checked out My Camera, My Voice, go check that out. Thanks for joining us, Jay. Great to have you on the show. It was
great,
today.
Actually, I really liked it. So yeah, definitely shout out to Jay.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Gary asks, any desire to utilize climbing in a more stylized shoot, i.e. with ballet dancers or models, that type of thing?
I'm not sure. Well, potentially. I have seen some shoots like that already, which, are actually quite stunning. I got to say, they are quite beautiful. I'm not sure if that's for me personally, although, fun fact, I have been photographed in a wedding dress in a climbing scenario, but I've been a model then, not a photographer. And it was quite fun. But I think I'm more on the side of photographing the athletes in their natural environment. So probably not so much for me, but who knows, maybe I'll change my mind.
Yeah, we look forward to it if you do it. Martina asks, do you use prime or zoom lenses? Which do you prefer?
I mainly use zoom lenses because of the weight savings that I can do. So my 3 lenses that I'll pretty much always have on me will be the 16-35-8, which is on my camera pretty much always. Then on a second body, I will have the 70-100 2.8, which is my definitely second choice for any photography. I love this lens as well. And then I'll have 24-70 2.8 as well, which is also great, but I'll probably end up using it less of all these 3. So Zoom for me.
Cool. And then Jefferson Graham says, this saved my life a few weeks ago when my camera fell head first on the ground. $1,500 lens was fine. The filter cracked into pieces.
Wow.
Yeah, always have a filter on your
Yeah.
cameras, especially if it's a $1,500. The reason I also have to give Jefferson a shout out. Many of you will know Jefferson from USA Today, where he does his incredible reports on all the tech. But Jefferson will actually be my next guest on Thursday here on the show. So join me on Thursday, the 25th at 11 a.m. Pacific, when I'll be joined by Jefferson. We'll be having a little look back at his career through music, photography, and his world at USA Today, and then what he's doing now. So going to be an interesting time on Thursday. Thanks for the shout out, Jefferson. And I had to bring this one up. Peak Design says, that's us. Hi, Peak Design.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining. And yes, we love your gear. Keep making
we do.
awesome
We
stuff
really
for
do.
us all, from the clips to the straps to the bags. We love it all. Big fans here at SmugMug, and I know Lena is as well. Right, I think we've got through most of them.
Last question through, that reminded me the one from Jefferson about his camera falling head down. One thing that you do want to make sure to have is an insurance, because you don't want to drop that camera on someone else too. So do make sure you've got the insurance, please.
Yeah, is there a special kind of insurance both for climbers and as a photographer that climbs?
So I've got a separate one for the climbing and separate one for photography. And I do got to say, it wasn't the easiest thing to get insured on. I didn't find any specific brands that would be like, specializing in climbing. So it did take me a little while to get insured, but I did end up going with Camera Assure Towergate, and they were very kind to insure me with full knowledge of what it is that I'm doing, and I'm really grateful for that, for sure.
Yeah, you gotta be fully clear to your insurer exactly what you're doing, because you never know.
Yeah.
Gary comes back. Do you have a dream shot you have yet to capture?
I've got dream locations that I would like to go to, and both photograph and climbing. Utah would be one of the top of my list for sure. Yosemite, I mean, hard not to if you're a climber. But Utah, just with the, the desert look and the oranges and just the warm hues, and the cracks, it looks beautiful. So definitely dream locations to photograph. And, Iceland, hard not to, especially seeing the episode with Tim Campbell as well. So.
Right now, any location sounds kind of cool. We just would love to travel anywhere at the moment and and get there. Where was the last place you've climbed? I think I saw recently you were at Cheddar Gorge. Was that maybe one of the last climbs that you did?
Yeah, it probably would be the last place I climbed, actually. Yeah, so Cheddar is quite local to Bristol. Well, very local. It's like 20 minutes away from where I normally live. However, I'm now spending time with my family and friends down in New Forest, so I'm slightly further away from any climbing. So we only have this wooden piece of block above the doors, which is called a fingerboard, which is not the same as climbing. It's pretty boring, but at least it keeps you up with your finger strength and stuff. But
looks like a torture device to me.
It pretty much is. Yeah, I gotta say, it's not far off.
Yeah. Gary came back and said he is in awe of Lena's skills, both athletic and photographic. Lots of great comments today. I think we have come to the end of the questions. I'm afraid if you send one in now, you're too late, because it will come in after I've said my thanks to Lena. But before I do that, of course, I would love you to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode here on SmugMug Live. As I've already said, join us back here on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. here in the UK, and 8 p.m. Central European Time, when I will be joined by Jefferson Graham, and we'll have a look back at his career in its many forms, from music to photographic to reporting to what's next for Jefferson. Really looking forward to that on Thursday. But for now, Lena, thank you so much for today. It's been an absolute blast getting to talk to you live on air instead of just you and I chatting to each other.
Yeah, it's been really nice, and I'm really grateful for everyone who joined and asked those great questions. And if your question has been missed and we haven't had a chance to answer it yet, please do feel free to reach out on social media, and I'd be happy to answer there. So yeah, give me a shout.
Yeah, all the links are below here in the descriptions. Last word has to go to Dario. I'm afraid he's gonna be the star of the show. He says he'll be in Utah for Ironman World Championships in September 2021. Let's meet there. Does it sound as good idea?
It sounds good. Yeah, I might see you there then.
Can I come? That sounds a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah. Well, maybe we can, do a project there. Why not?
Absolutely, yeah. If you're going to be in Utah in September, let's, well, assuming we can travel by then, fingers crossed we can. Thank you, everybody, for your questions, for your support of the show, for your support of Lena. And yeah, look after yourselves wherever you are in the world. Be kind, stay safe, look after each other, and we'll see you back here on Thursday for another episode of SmugMug Live. Thanks, Lena. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.